but and I didn't want to interrupt them, but it seems like I'm on this channel here. That's one.
Check, check, check. 1, 2. Check, check, check. 1, 2. Do you have sound on yours?
Actually, are they doing an intro? Oh gosh.
Oh, something. Okay.
Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. I didn't turn it off. No, I hear it. Okay. Yeah, I'm pretty loud.
Want me to go outside? Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Oh, no, not yet. I mean, yeah, look like it. Just come up and talk.
I didn't even think about that. Yeah, okay. That's the sound here. Yeah. Oh, just let her know the question. How are you? Are you the one who's going to be asking the question? Okay, perfect. I'm Jay. The thing is, like, you know better than me. Behind them, do you think that makes sense? Better than me. No? Just gonna. But she said it doesn't really matter. But I was gonna start broadcasting at 1 for live streaming it as well, so I could pick up some of it. I don't know.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay, welcome. Sorry, I'm just gonna, I can take this. Okay, I guess I can't take this off of the stand. I can? Okay. Oh, wow, that's way easier than I was making it seem to be. Thank you for joining us for the 2022 Chautauqua program. My name is Sophia Thornblad, and I'm the Executive Director of the Horatio Colony Museum and Nature Preserve here in Keene. We are delighted to be co-hosting this event with the Keene Public Library for the first time since 2019. Chautauqua is a community-based cultural and social movement that started in the 1870s and flourished in the United States until the mid-1920s. During this time, there existed hundreds of touring Chautauquas that presented lectures, dance, music, drama, and other forms of cultural enrichment. As you may or may not know, Chautauqua programs have been coming to Keene for a long time, the first being held in 1914. Our founder, Horatio Colony II, attended these programs when he was a teenager. During its peak years, Chautauqua brought some 30 events to the city each year, and they would be held in a tent near the rear of the Washington Street High School building. After its decline in the 1920s, Chautauqua was reborn as a public humanities program in 1976. Today's Chautauquas feature scholars portraying significant historical figures in first-person performances, which will be followed by a question and answer period with the character, during which questions will be answered in the voice and the time of the character. After that, you'll be able to ask questions of the scholar, who is able to answer the questions that the character could not or would not answer. Today's speakers are Dr. James Armstead as Booker T. Washington and Rebecca Marks Jimerson as Ida B. Wells. At this time, if you have a cell phone, please turn it off. We ask that there be no photography, videotaping, or texting during today's performances. This year's program is made possible by the Friends of the Keene Public Library with a generous American Rescue Plan, Humanities Grant for Libraries, an initiative of the American Library Association, made possible with support from the National Endowment for the Humanities through the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. It is my pleasure to introduce Gail Zachariah, the Head of Engagement and Youth Services at the Keene Public Library.
Hello. I just want to welcome everyone and say that in addition to the grant provided us some funds, in addition to the speaker fees and all the associated costs to improve a bit the sound and filming capabilities. So one thing we are doing with this program, there's a camera in the back that is filming things. It's an automatic camera. There's a camera, someone monitoring it over here, so that it's being live streamed and it will be taped. And your friends who are not with us today, because still people are not really coming out as much as they did. We know that this program, we haven't had Chautauqua here since 2019. That was 3 years ago. But then, unfortunately, we had 3 years when we didn't have Chautauqua either because they were renovating this Knights Hall. So it's been a while, and it will take us a while to build this program back up. But it's really important, I feel, because it brings first-person perspective on other people, places, and times that really nothing else does. So right now, I want you to go back to 1915. It's November 1st, 1915. And our speaker this afternoon, Booker T. Washington, he's on a fundraising tour of the Northeast. His doctors have advised a few days rest from his travels, and he remembered passing through Keene some years ago. He was here then in 1911, and he gave a speech in Concord, I believe, and many people from Keene went to it. He says he has always wanted to return to Keene, and this was a good opportunity he discovered only this morning by a parishioner while attending services at a local church that this was going on, and he asked if he could come say a few words to our townsfolk, and I agreed. So welcome, Mr. Washington.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Please excuse me if I seem a little tired. I have had a long train journey, and the doctors tell me I should get a few days rest before I go on to New York. I understand some of you find New Yorkers somewhat tiring yourselves. Well, I have stopped in Keene a few days. I remember it from earlier travels. It's a lovely town, and it's my pleasure to be here. It's my pleasure to be in New Hampshire. When I was here before, I gave a talk in Concord to the National Education Association. I'm a teacher, as you know, and of course, I talk about education in my travels. I typically discuss practical education. That is the education that prepares students who are going to become teachers to teach practical subjects, to prepare their students in normal schools to be workers, to be business people, to have practical application of their skills so that they can be enjoyed by these students as they go on in their lives. Not necessarily to study subjects which would not be particularly useful. Now, I enjoy particularly being in New Hampshire because you are one of the original states. Your motto, I was reminded, live free or die, when I was here before, I like very much. I like it. It's unequivocal. It's concise. It's clear. It leaves no room for escaping to allow one to tarnish the reputation of how you feel about freedom. I can appreciate that. As you know, my biography was entitled Up from Slavery, and it's about my personal struggle. It's about Tuskegee, the school where I was principal and now serve as president. We are declared ourselves a college. And we too understand the meaning of freedom. The title of that book, and I've written 14, but the title of that book is not only the biographical title, it's my story. I was born a slave. I think in April 1856, I don't know for sure, because records were not kept of slave births. That was not a particularly important matter on a plantation. But by deducing from the season and things that were going on, I celebrate on the 5th of April. But I cannot be sure. I have no records. There is no certainty that that was either the day or the year because of that status. 9 years I was a slave. 9 years. And I remember in 1865, the day that freedom came in Harper's Ford, Virginia. It was a day that was celebrated particularly by my mother. She talked about freedom when I was a young boy. She talked about wanting to live until the day freedom came. Well, it did come, and there was great celebration, but there was not a great understanding among the African population of America what freedom would bring. You see, freedom was the opportunity for Americans who were not Black to work where they chose, to choose their professions, to become part of the body politic. Well, that was not the case among the freedmen. After you were free, you were loosened from the plantation or the station or the factory where you had worked, but you had no money, you had no education, many had no particular profession or trade or skill and would have to find their way in this new world. Freedom was an experiment. Freedom was dangerous because there was oppression in freedom. The Ku Klux Klan was about. There was interest in reducing the former slaves to a servile status where you might work much as a serf, connected with the land or with a particular station you had had previously, but you would not be able to go on to move to act as an independent person. The question of race will probably be the most important question, political question, social question, economic question in the coming century. The 20th century will see the issues of race in America as central to how we conduct ourselves, who we are. America is a great nation, a great nation. We have 120 million citizens. Last year, it was declared we were the most productive nation on the planet. Our hamlets and villages and towns and cities are linked by more than 200,000 miles of railroads. We have the most railroads of any nation on the planet. But there are problems we have to face. Our economy is large and it's growing, and I'm sorry to say it may be growing because of this great conflagration that has struck the European nations. The mother countries of our civilization, England, France, Germany, are at war with each other. It's a great war. The values, the products, the benefits of the industrial age, the machine age, have been harnessed to make war, to kill our fellow man. Death reigns from the air. Great fleets hide in bays, in harbors, on oceans, hunting for each other, lurking, as it were, so that the power of industrialized production can hurl great explosives 15, perhaps 20 miles to destroy and kill our fellow man. And who are we in this day and age? Can we continue to be great? What is it that we are to do? What are we to become? How should we act toward each other? The people in New Hampshire appreciate freedom. You say that in your motto, live free or die. This was illustrated in the Revolution, very valiantly, gloriously. It was again illustrated after we had defined and satisfied our independence in 1776. We then had to redefine and constitute the meaning of freedom in 1861. And once again, New Hampshire answered the call. Much of what we are to do in the future will be the responsibility to ensure that all citizens, wherever they come from, because we have many immigrants, wherever they are going, because they will go into many areas, and we are expanding across this great nation. 15 years ago, the frontier was declared closed. Well, I've been to New Mexico and Arizona in my travels. I'm not so sure the frontier is really closed. What do your neighbors in Boston say? West of Dedham, what? Well, we are growing, we are building, we are developing. My school, Tuskegee, is part of that development. We want to be part, we want the Negro citizens in our country to be part of this growing America, this greatness that we are beginning to enjoy, this expansion we are seeking in industrialization. But we must understand the white population in America and the Negro population in America, that 90% of the Negro people in America are rural and Southern. 8/10 of those are sharecroppers. And what kinds of skills do sharecroppers need? What do they need to know? What do farmers need to know? They need to know agricultural science. We have at our institution Dr. George Washington Carver, who is busy every day as a practical scientist. Yes, he is a scientist, but a practical scientist. He tells agronomists what it is they are to do when they study, so they can teach farmers to be better at husbandry, at animal husbandry, at plant development and growth, at the creation of new crops, the development of hybrids that can grow better in our soils, with our temperatures, and around our country. We are doing many of these things at Tuskegee because we are trying to make a change. Well, sometimes, as you know, change is difficult. When I started at Tuskegee, I came from Hampton Institute, where I was a teacher. I was recommended by General Samuel Chapman Armstrong to be the new principal for a normal school being developed in rural Alabama. The people of Alabama were expecting a white teacher to run the school, and they contacted Hampton for a recommendation. They were looking, no doubt, for someone who taught there that General Armstrong could recommend and whom they could place their trust. $2,000 was allocated for the creation of a school. However, this money was only for salaries. No money was allocated for buying land, building buildings, books, a library, all of the things that one would need to create a new institution. I arrived as the only teacher, no building. A borrowed church building was where we set up. That was the administrative office. That was the schoolroom, and later rooms plural. It was also the dormitory initially. There were 30 students ready that had been selected upon my arrival to join Tuskegee. They were selected for several reasons, but principally among them, they were accepted as students because they could be teachers. They could go out and teach the skills they were going to learn at Tuskegee. I am happy to say, since that day in 1881, with those 30 students and no buildings, that we have grown. We have prospered. We built buildings ourselves. We created our own farms, our own dairy, beef production. We grow the food that we eat. We now have 2,345 acres, 107 buildings, 200 faculty members, and more than 2,000 students. And we've done this since 1881. Now, much of that has been through the largesse of those who, through philanthropic means, have helped provide monies. That is a very good thing. We could not have grown so fast without their help and support. However, it means that as a teacher, as the principal of this normal school, now the president of the college we have named ourselves recently, I must travel 50% of the time most years, and sometimes even more. And I'm getting older. You can probably see that by just looking at me. My wife tells me I'm getting older all the time and complains. By the way, Professor Murray, my wife, is a member of the faculty. She directs the women's departments. My brother John is the head of industrial education. However, I do want you to know that there is no nepotism. My son also works with the university, my oldest son, and my younger son is going to. Recently, my wife is responsible for a building called Covent Hall. This is where the women's programs are headquartered, where her offices are. And as I was walking past, as I often do, I inspect the campus when I am on campus almost every day. I like to ride my horse Butler in the morning around the campus. I noticed that there were no flowers or neat shrubbery or gardening at this building. And through Mr. Sturm, my private secretary, I sent her a note, not as my wife, but as director of women's programs. And I told her I was disappointed upon my recent review of the buildings and grounds in her department. It did not meet the standards of Tuskegee. There were no flowers around the building. The shrubbery was in disarray, the grass was not cut. And I wanted this deplorable situation rectified as soon as possible. Well, now you can imagine such communications might have a deleterious effect upon my household happiness. It's not true. She understood her position as an employee. I received a 3-word reply: humph, humph, humph. Well, so much for working with your family at a large institution. I gave a speech, somewhat famous, only 5 minutes in 1895 at the Atlanta Exposition. This celebrated cotton coming back as being important in the American economy, the South coming back into the economy since the Civil War. It had taken until 1895 for Virginia, the richest state in the South, at the beginning of the Civil War, to have the same level of domestic product, the same economic production. It had taken 35 years to return. No other southern state has done that as of yet, but we are moving in that direction. We are moving in that direction. So I was asked to come and talk about the participation of Negro citizens in this growth in the South. We were experiencing at this time in the South a return to a peonage. Segregation was rampant. New Jim Crow laws were being inactivated. The black codes that not allowing Negro citizens to ride on trains except in special cars, not to use public facilities, not to be able to buy houses, even those who were successful in certain neighborhoods. All of this was happening, and I realized that the struggle of Reconstruction had not been won. We were not considered open and welcomed members of the body politic. So I said to my fellow Southerners at this meeting, I understand that you are not happy with many of the things that have happened. They did lose the war. I understand that you have seen a change in your society that you do not necessarily appreciate, but 4.5 million Negroes live in the country. They are no longer slaves. If you want these citizens, these new citizens, to be criminals, to be non-productive, not to be integrated into the economic life of the country, then continue to segment and segregate and subjugate these citizens. But if you want prosperous citizens among you, participants with trades and professions that are useful to your growth, then you are going to have to welcome these new freedmen into your